I was standing in the kitchen, half-dressed, barefoot on cold tile, when I heard the door creak open. I turned, and there he was, frozen in the doorway like a ghost had passed through him. My heart dropped to my stomach. Time stopped. My instinct wasn't shame, not right away. It was fear, not fear of being seen in my underwear, but of everything that was about to follow, because it wasn't just my body that had been exposed. It was the truth. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. His eyes said it all: confusion, betrayal, hurt, maybe even disgust. I had been caught, not just in a moment of physical vulnerability, but in the aftermath of a decision that had already ripped a hole through the fabric of our home. A decision I made in silence, in secrecy, believing the lies I told myself, that I deserved more, that I wasn't being seen, that a moment's passion would stay hidden. But secrets don't stay secrets forever. They wait patiently, like smoke under a closed door, until someone walks in and breathes it in. I wish I could tell you that this story ended with forgiveness, or that I was somehow the victim of a complicated love. But the truth is uglier than that. Infidelity doesn't come wrapped in romantic excuses. It comes dressed as selfishness, as cowardice. It comes at night when your partner is asleep, when you check your phone and delete the evidence. It comes in hotel rooms and fleeting glances, and all the ways you stop looking the person you love in the eye. That day, standing there nearly naked, I couldn't cover up what had already been exposed long before I took off my clothes. The worst part wasn't being caught. It was realizing who I had become. I betrayed someone who trusted me, yes, but more than that, I betrayed the values I thought I stood for. I became the storm I once feared. I used to believe that love could survive anything, but I learned the hard way that trust, once broken, doesn't just bruise, it shatters, and those shards cut everyone involved, even those who never had a say in any of it. Especially him. He wasn't supposed to carry the weight of adult sins on young shoulders. What came next was silence, a heavy, suffocating silence that settled in the house like dust. Conversations turned cold. Eye contact vanished. The laughter died. He didn't tell his father right away, not with words, but the truth began to bleed through the cracks. Eventually, the confrontation came, as they always do, and I had to face more than just one man's heartbreak. I had to face the family I fractured. I had to look at myself and realize that infidelity doesn't just hurt lovers. It wounds children, breaks bonds, and corrodes respect. Redemption isn't romantic. It's grueling. It's sitting in therapy appointments, hearing the words, "I don't trust you anymore," from someone who used to hold your hand like a lifeline. It's trying to rebuild something when you know the original foundation was built on lies. It's understanding that sometimes, no matter how sorry you are, some doors stay closed forever, and that is the price you pay. That's what it means to walk through fire and know you set the match to your own home. And yet, there's something in the ashes, not hope, not yet, but truth, and sometimes, truth is the only place left to rebuild. You can't take back what you've done, but you can stop lying to yourself about who you are. You can choose honesty, even when it's painful. You can stop pretending and start listening to the silence you created. That silence holds the real lessons, not about love, but about consequences, about the weight of a glance, the meaning behind broken eye contact, the way someone looks at you when they've lost all faith. Because once he walked in and saw me standing there not just in my underwear, but in my guilt, in my cowardice, in the wreckage of choices I tried to hide. It all changed. There was no going back. But maybe that's what needed to happen. Maybe the truth had to walk in wearing his eyes. Maybe I had to lose everything I took for granted before I could understand what it meant to love in the light. And even now, as I speak these words out loud, I'm not looking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm just speaking truth, because someone somewhere is standing at the edge of a decision that could burn their world to the ground. And maybe, just maybe, hearing this might be the water they need before they strike the match. I didn't hear the door open. Not really. Maybe it creaked. Maybe it clicked. But the sound was so familiar, so unthreatening, that it didn't register as a warning. I had just walked out of the bathroom, towel, dried my hair, and pulled on the only thing I could grab in the moment. Just a pair of underwear. Nothing else. The day had been long, emotionally exhausting in ways I hadn't even begun to process, and I thought I had a moment to myself. A breath, a space where I could let go of the tension, the weight, the double life I was balancing with every forced smile and half-hearted hug. And then he walked in. He didn't yell. He didn't even gasp. His reaction was worse. He froze, the kind of stillness that doesn't come from fear, but from impact, from shock. His eyes locked onto me, but it was clear he wasn't seeing just skin or a body. He was seeing something far deeper. Something was crumbling in real time, and I saw it happen. Right there in the silence, a wall came down between us, but not one I could rebuild with a hug or a gentle excuse. The damage wasn't loud, it was quiet, and in that quiet, I understood what it means to be truly exposed. That moment stretched on for what felt like hours, though it must have only been a few seconds. My heart pounded, not from the awkwardness of the situation, but from the knowledge that he had walked in on more than just me getting dressed. It wasn't the physical exposure that struck me, it was emotional vulnerability mixed with guilt. Because my body wasn't the only thing laid bare. There was a rawness in the air that couldn't be covered with clothes or apologies. He didn't say anything, but I could see the questions behind his silence. Why are you like this? Why are you here like this? What did I just walk into? I wanted to say something, anything, but my mouth was dry and my thoughts were running too fast to form a sentence. All I could do was reach for something, anything to cover up, as if the act of pulling on a shirt would also erase what had just happened. But it didn't, it couldn't, because the real problem wasn't what I was, or wasn't, wearing. It was everything else that was hanging in the air, unspoken, the tension, the betrayal, the parts of me I had compartmentalized, shoved into locked rooms, and hoped no one would ever notice. He didn't need evidence. He didn't need to see someone else there, or find a message on a phone. That moment told him everything. Kids, especially those caught in the crossfire of adult lives, have a way of understanding the truth without having it spelled out. He had walked in expecting normalcy, maybe to ask a question, maybe to grab something from the hallway, but instead, he stumbled into a moment I couldn't undo, a moment that betrayed every illusion I had built around myself. The awkwardness was only the surface. Underneath it was a more sinister current. The moment where a child realizes the people they look up to are flawed, not just flawed, but capable of deeply selfish, deeply damaging choices. I could see it registering in his eyes, the kind of recognition that isn't just about shock, it's about disappointment. Disappointment laced with confusion and fear. His stillness wasn't about seeing me in a state of undress. It was about everything that state implied. It was about doors left unlocked, moments mismanaged, secrets poorly hidden. My body language must have told its own story. The way I froze, the way I panicked, not like someone caught in an innocent accident, but like someone whose lie had just been found out. That reaction was louder than any confession. It said more than any journal entry or confrontation ever could. I had been unmasked, not only to him but to myself, and as he backed out of the doorway, slowly, without turning his back to me, I realized that nothing would ever feel innocent again. That split-second exposure was a fault line. It split the past from the present. Everything that came before, the smiles, the dinners, the homework help, the attempts to connect, suddenly felt like memories from a different version of myself, one I didn't even recognize anymore. Because the woman he saw in that moment wasn't the woman I pretended to be. She was someone raw, unguarded, and caught in the wake of her own recklessness. And no matter how much I tried to convince myself afterward that it wasn't what it looked like, deep down I knew he had walked in on a moment I'd never be able to explain away, not with words, not with tears. He hadn't just seen me, he'd seen the truth, and it changed everything. There's a moment after being caught, not just seen but truly caught, when the silence becomes unbearable. It's not just the absence of sound, it's the weight of what hasn't been said, the anticipation of an explosion you know is coming but can't prepare for. After he walked away from that doorway, everything around me felt suddenly unstable. The walls felt thinner, the air colder. The lies I had carefully stacked like a house of cards were beginning to shake, and I knew it was only a matter of time before the whole thing collapsed. Secrets don't stay buried forever. They wait, and mine had just been unearthed by the most unlikely hands. I remember standing in the mirror, staring at my own face, searching for any trace of the woman I used to be, but all I could see was someone exhausted by her own deception. Every glance at my reflection reminded me that I had crossed a line I swore I never would. And now, I wasn't the only one carrying that truth. That's what changed everything. The shame didn't just come from what I had done. It came from the knowledge that someone else now held a piece of my guilt. Someone who didn't ask for it, didn't deserve it, and couldn't possibly know what to do with it. What followed was a slow unraveling. At first, nothing was said out loud. He didn't tell his father immediately. He didn't even look me in the eye. But the atmosphere in the house changed. Quietly, almost imperceptibly at first. He moved differently, like he was avoiding stepping on glass. He stayed in his room longer, spoke less, his voice a little tighter. It's astonishing how much damage a single moment can do, how it snakes its way into the everyday, poisoning even the most mundane routines. I started second, guessing everything, every question I answered, every plate I set on the table, every door I closed. I was constantly bracing for the truth to surface, for the confrontation I knew I had earned. And it did come, just not in the way I expected. It came in fragments, in the quiet way he spoke to his father a little differently, in the sentences, the way they left rooms to talk, the pauses when I entered. I knew, and the worst part wasn't the dread of being found out. It was the ache of knowing that someone else had to carry the weight of the secret with me. He had seen the truth, and whether he wanted to or not, he had to live with it too. He had been pulled into the mess of my choices without a voice, without a defense, without a choice. Eventually, the words came. The confrontation hit with a kind of emotional force I didn't expect. Not yelling, not accusations at first, but disappointment. Quiet, heavy, piercing disappointment. And when the questions came, how long, why, who, I felt myself shrink under their weight, because every answer I gave felt inadequate, because there's no way to explain infidelity without sounding like you're trying to excuse it. Every explanation I offered felt like just another version of the same lie. I wasn't happy. I felt invisible. I didn't think it would get this far. But those reasons don't mean anything when you've already set the fire. And the betrayal, it wasn't just between partners. It went deeper than that. The person I hurt wasn't just the man I married. It was the entire structure of family. The betrayal seeped into the cracks of every relationship connected to ours. I saw it in the quiet distance that grew between me and the boy who walked in. I saw it in the sudden coldness in his father's eyes. Trust is not something you can rebuild with promises. It's something built over time, brick by brick, and I had shattered it in a heartbeat. I started realizing that infidelity isn't just about a moment of passion or emotional escape. It's about betrayal of the future, the plans made, the expectations carried, the belief that we are all safe in our homes, that our families are intact. And when that trust is broken, everything gets questioned. The family unit becomes a war zone of suspicion and hurt. Every glance becomes a test. Every silence becomes accusation. The air grows heavy with what people don't want to say. And in the middle of it all, I found myself lying awake at night, listening to the creaks of the house, wondering which step would be the one to finally bring everything down. In that unraveling, I saw myself clearly. Not the way I wanted to be seen, but as the person I had become, someone who chose escape over honesty, someone who shattered peace for fleeting validation. And as the days passed, the unraveling turned into something slower, saccharine erosion. Not a collapse, but a steady wearing away of everything we had built. And once the truth was out, there was no sewing the pieces back together as they were. The damage had been done. The truth had walked in wearing the eyes of someone I should have protected. And now it was everywhere. Infidelity carries a weight that's far greater than most people realize until they are in the aftermath, standing in the ruins. It's not just the betrayal itself that breaks people. It's what that betrayal represents. It's a moral rupture, a quiet and devastating shift in the fabric of trust. The moment someone decides to step outside the bounds of loyalty, it's not just a betrayal of the person they promised themselves to. It's a betrayal of the foundation on which a family is built. You think it's about passion, about need, about something that was missing. But the truth is, it's about the conscious decision to place your desires above everything you've built, above everyone who depends on your consistency, your honesty, your word. The moral weight is heaviest in the quiet moments, not during the affair, when the thrill overrides the consequences, not even during the initial discovery, when adrenaline takes over. The real burden settles in during the weeks and months after, when the ripple effects begin to show up in the faces of those around you. It's when the people in your house walk around differently, when silence lingers too long at the dinner table, when someone who once leaned into your affection now stiffens beneath your touch. That's when it sinks in. That's when the shame becomes a presence in the room. Not loud, not accusatory, just there, breathing beside you, reminding you that nothing will ever be the same again. Infidelity doesn't just damage intimacy, it corrodes identity. When you are unfaithful, you have to fracture yourself. You become two people, the one who performs daily life and the one who hides in secret. You lie not just to your partner, but to yourself. You begin to justify, compartmentalize, rationalize. You tell yourself you're not hurting anyone, that this is temporary, that your reasons are valid. But deep down you always know, and when the truth comes out, all those fractured pieces come crashing together, and you're forced to face the full version of yourself, unmasked, unedited, deeply flawed. What's worse is that the impact of your betrayal doesn't stop at you and the person you cheated on. It spreads, it infects, it tears at the hearts of those who never had a say, never even knew what was happening until it hit them in the face. In my case, that truth came through a child's eyes that shouldn't have had to understand deceit or mistrust so early. Eyes that once looked up to me with curiosity and warmth, now clouded with something more difficult. That look haunts me more than any fight ever could, because children feel betrayal differently. They don't just see it as a mistake, they see it as a break in safety, a loss of something that felt permanent. The family begins to falter not through confrontation, but through the slow withdrawal of love. Communication shrinks. Emotions become guarded. The person you once confided in now becomes someone you navigate like a minefield. Everything is reactive. Everyone is on edge. You watch the person you betrayed become someone else. Harder, colder, quieter. Not because they want to, but because they have to. Because trusting you again would mean putting themselves in harm's way. And that's a choice they're no longer willing to make. The moral failure of infidelity lies in its selfishness. It's not just about lying. It's about taking something sacred and making it small. It's about rewriting the script of your life without telling the people who are supposed to share it with you. It's about letting someone into your life in secret, while the people who love you remain in the dark. And for what? For a moment of escape, for the illusion of being desired. The price you pay afterward is not just guilt. It's the constant awareness that your actions have reshaped the lives of others in ways you can't undo. And no matter how much you try to repair, the memory of what you did becomes a permanent marker. You see it in the hesitation when someone speaks to you, in the way affection is offered with caution, in the way conversations are filtered. You can tell yourself you're trying to do better, that you've learned, that you're healing, but the people around you are still wounded, and you don't get to dictate their recovery. You don't get to rush their forgiveness. In the moral economy of relationships, cheating is theft. You steal someone's sense of security. You steal time, truth, and trust. And when the affair ends, and it always does, you're left with the debt. A debt you owe to every person you hurt, every heart you fractured, every promise you abandoned, and the weight of that debt never really leaves. You carry it in your silences, in your apologies, in the way you rebuild, or fail to rebuild, the broken parts of your life. There's something unbearably human about pretending. We do it every day in small, harmless ways, smiling when we don't feel like it, nodding through a conversation we're not really listening to, saying "I'm fine" when we're anything but. But then there are the deeper pretenses, the ones that demand performance, that take energy to maintain, that blur the line between who we are and who we're pretending to be. After everything that happened, after that door opened and the truth flooded in without warning, I still tried to pretend. I still tried to play the role of the composed stepmother, the supportive wife, the woman who had things under control. But inside, I was a storm of regret and fear and guilt. And worse, I was now acting out a version of my life that didn't exist anymore, at least not in the minds of the people who mattered most. I tried to laugh at the dinner table, to ask how school was, to comment on the weather like nothing had happened. And yet every word out of my mouth felt hollow, like a script I was reciting with no conviction. Pretending to hold things together is a slow kind of death. It eats at your authenticity. It forces you to carry conversations you no longer have the emotional strength to manage. It makes you hyper, aware of every movement, every eye that glances your way. You start wondering if everyone knows, if your guilt is visible, if your voice trembles too much when you speak, if your presence now creates tension where it used to create comfort. The hardest part of pretending isn't the act itself. It's doing it in front of the people you've hurt. It's knowing that every smile you give feels like manipulation, that every attempt at normalcy might be interpreted as denial, that no matter how genuine your remorse might be, your very existence in the same room is now a trigger for pain. There were moments where I would catch him, the boy who had seen too much, looking at me differently. Not with anger, not always, but with distance, with calculation, as if trying to decide what version of me was real. The one who helped with homework and made pancakes on Sundays, or the one he saw standing in her underwear, exposed in more ways than one. I felt like a stranger in my own home. The pictures on the walls, the scent of dinner in the kitchen, the sound of the television humming in the background, none of it grounded me anymore. These were the markers of a life that required trust to mean anything, and that trust was broken. So everything became a set piece. I wasn't living, I was performing. Every day, I got out of bed and put on clothes and walked through my house like I belonged there. But the truth was, I didn't know where I belonged anymore. Not in that marriage, not in that family, not even in my own skin. Pretending also meant silencing myself. I didn't get to cry in the open. I didn't get to fall apart. I had to be composed because falling apart would make it about me, and it wasn't. It couldn't be. I had caused the wound. I didn't get the luxury of asking for comfort. So I became smaller, quieter. I folded into myself, hoping that if I could just be invisible long enough, maybe the tension would ease. Maybe the glares would soften. Maybe the memory of what I had done would dull enough for us to function again. But pretending doesn't make pain fade. It just pushes it deeper, buries it under layers of silence and politeness and unspoken resentments. What I didn't realize at first was that pretending also created pressure in others. When you fake normalcy, you ask those around you to do the same, and that's its own kind of cruelty. You're asking people to act like they're okay when they're not. You're asking them to sit across from you at breakfast and pretend they don't feel betrayed. You're asking a child to resume calling you mom or stepmom or her without flinching. It's like handing someone a mask and demanding they wear it, just so you can feel less guilty about what you've done. And that's a heavy burden to place on anyone, especially someone who never chose to be part of your mess in the first place. I thought for a while that pretending would lead to healing, that if we could just act normal long enough, maybe normalcy would return. But that's not how healing works. Healing requires truth. It requires raw, painful conversations. It requires vulnerability, ownership, and time. Pretending bypasses all of that. It's a shortcut that leads nowhere, and eventually the act collapses. Someone slips. Someone says the thing everyone's been avoiding. And in that moment, all the effort you put into keeping up appearances crumbles, because pretending doesn't fix anything. It only delays the reckoning. So I sat there, day after day, performing a life that no longer felt like mine, in a home filled with eyes that watched and waited, for honesty, for remorse, for something real to emerge from behind the curtain. And somewhere deep inside, I knew the act couldn't last forever.